Allow me to riff off of the hymn that I absolutely adore and just say this. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of BYU basketball, and his name is AJ Dybantsa.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. As always, thank you to all of you who are everydayers right here on your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. Coming up on today's show, we're going to talk about AJ Dybantsa's starring role in the McDonald's All-American game last night. We'll also talk about a commitment date set by top-tier tight end prospect Brock Harris and the chances the BYU Cougars garner said commitment. And we'll finish up today's show with more BYU tight end talk with BYU tight ends coach Kevin Gilbride. All right, so without further ado, if you did not watch the McDonald's All-American game last night, you missed out. Here's the deal. I tuned in expecting to see essentially a game that was going to be the equivalent of the NBA All-Star game, and the NBA All-Star game is an absolute farce in this day and age. What we got was a far more competitive game than I ever expected. Was it perfect? No. Were there times the guys got loose and guys were like, you know what, I'm not going to challenge that? Yes. But more often than not, this game featured the top tier prospects across high school basketball going toe-to-toe against one another and competing all out. You had the Boozer twins. You had Nate Ament. You had Darren Peterson, who's headed to Kansas. The Boozer twins, speaking of Carlos Boozer's twin boys, they're headed to Duke. Well, among all that bunch of top-tier talent is one AJ Dybantsa. And I had a person actually reach out to me yesterday. If you listened to the announcers of that game last night, they were making it very clear that it's AJ Dybantsa. I had somebody also reach out to me and say, Jake, I need you to clarify that's how you pronounce his name properly. It's Dybantsa. So I'll just pass that along to all of you out there in Cougar Nation. It's not Dybantsa. It's not Dybantsa. It's Dybantsa. But that's beside the point. What I saw from AJ Dybantsa among his peers, who are the top tier of talent in college, going into college, I guess I should say, that are in high school right now, was a guy who showed why he is the top, the number one prospect in this recruiting class. He was in attack mode all night long, and the one thing about this is it wasn't all offense. He was a very willing passer. He was more than active on the defensive side of the basketball. And he told Kevin Durant in an interview, an exclusive interview with him and Kevin Durant, that he plans on challenging for all conference honors, Big 12 Player of the Year, but also mentioned he wants to be Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year next year for the BYU Cougars. Everything I saw from AJ Dybantsa in that game told me everything I needed to know about this kid that I didn't already know. And what did I need to know? I wanted to see how he was going to perform amongst other elite talents. Yes, he's been playing in this Nike EYBL league. He's been playing against top-tier AAU talent for literally years. But I was waiting to see, I wanted to see what he would do when surrounded by other guys who are fellow five-star prospects and see how he would compete. And for my money, he was among, if not the most active and most intense player on the court when he was on the court in that All-American game. It was absolutely phenomenal to watch him do what he did. He's got all of it in his offensive arsenal. He's got the size, the skill, the ability to both play on and off the ball as a 6'9" swingman. Think of LeBron James type point forward ability. That's what a guy like AJ Dybantsa is bringing to BYU next year. And I said in the open of today's show, my eyes have beheld the glory of the coming of BYU basketball. And yes, it is AJ Dybantsa. BYU and Provo, Utah have never seen a kid of this caliber in program history. I'll be very blunt about that. We have seen the likes of Jimmer Fredette. We have seen Danny Ainge. They are top tier talents in their own right. We've also seen the Garner Meads of the world. We have seen Travis Hansen. We have seen some really, really talented players. But I'm telling you, we have not seen the caliber of prospect and type of player that AJ Dybantsa appears to be. And I, for one, am ecstatic to have a chance to watch this up close and track it from a professional perspective, doing what I do in sports media, both on this podcast as well as in my day job for the KSL Sports Zone. It is going to be an incredible season. And I don't want to wish away the summer football season just to get to basketball season. But for the first time in quite some time, yours truly might be more looking forward to BYU basketball than BYU football, at least right now. That is crazy for me to say, because I think any of you who are longtime everydayers on this podcast know that I have a deep, unabashed love for college football. But what BYU basketball appears it could have on its hands, and it's led by AJ Dybantsa. We talked yesterday about the potential of having him teaming up with Yegor Demon as well as Richie Saunders should they decide to return to BYU. Still no official word there as of the recording of this podcast. But everything that BYU basketball aspires to be, well, AJ Dybantsa, I think, can lead them to that. He showed that he is the premier of the premier talents in the high school ranks coming in to this upcoming college basketball season. I was flabbergasted at how good he was. And trust me, I have seen a lot of highlights of his over the last year or so since his recruitment took off with regards to BYU. I, for one, am just wondering how high of heights he could lead BYU to. I was filling in on our afternoon show, the Drive Time show on the KSL Sports Zone earlier this week, and had a chat with former Utah linebacker Stevenson Sylvester, and he was talking about the fact that a guy like AJ Dybantsa, he believes could have a Carmelo Anthony type impact for BYU. And if you remember what Melo did in his lone season at Syracuse, well, he only led Syracuse to a national title and was the best player among a bunch of different really good players on a Jim Boeheim-led squad for the Syracuse Orange. If that is the caliber of AJ Dybantsa and what he's capable of, buckle up, folks. It's going to be a really, really wild but fun ride for BYU basketball beginning this fall in November. It's not going to get easier for AJ Dybantsa because he's taking the next step. He's going to step up and play against guys who are 22, 23, 24. In the case of a guy like Trevin Knell, potentially 26 years old. That is the possibility of the type of guys he's playing against. But comments that AJ has made recently indicate that he is looking forward to the challenge that he gets to take on as he takes this next step in his basketball journey. He's played against the top tier talent, as I mentioned, in the high school ranks. You can tell that he's ready to get in there and compete against the type of players that the Big 12 has across the conference. Darren Peterson, who many consider to be maybe the number 2 prospect and had an outside chance of overtaking AJ Dybantsa, will be going head-to-head with him when BYU and Kansas play. This is going to be a really interesting unfolding of what AJ Dybantsa's next steps in his basketball journey take, but everything I saw in that McDonald's All-American game tell me that this is a kid who's got just a motor that is really special. And the talent combined with that motor and the passion he plays the game with, you can tell this kid is ready to put BYU on his shoulders. And if he has his way, lead them to heights hitherto never before seen in BYU basketball history. It's crazy to consider, but get ready. It could be a really, really fun time in the next 12 months for BYU basketball. All right, coming up next, we're going to flip over and talk some BYU football. A commitment date has been set by top-tier prospect Brock Harris out of Pineview High School down there in St. George. What are the chances BYU can garner the signature of this BYU legacy prospect? We'll delve into that next as we roll on right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for skilled trades. That is our friends at Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. And their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product information to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service. You'll always talk to a real person when you're in need. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order that you make. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage of this, and now it's your turn to do that. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and your electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use the promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Once again, use the promo code SH5 to get 5% off your order. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Hope y'all are doing well out there in Cougar Nation. By the way, y'all are absolutely marvelous. I mentioned yesterday we went over the 10,000 subscriber mark on YouTube, and they just continue to pour in. So thank you to all of you for subscribing, rating, reviewing, sharing the podcast with your family and friends. Really do appreciate your guys' patronage. It means the world to me that you guys find it of value. All right, so BYU football is on the hunt for a top tier recruiting class, if at all possible, in this upcoming 2026 cycle. There are a lot of guys with connections to BYU who are top tier talents in this 2026 recruiting class. And chief among them is a kid out of Pineview High School down there in St. George, Utah, and Brock Harris. He is a four-star prospect on some websites. 24/7 Sports, which I subscribe to, is my favorite website, has him as a 4-star. His composite rating indicates he's on the border of a 5-star status. I would imagine with a big senior year, he easily could garner that 5th star. Currently, he is the 5th rated tight end in the entire country. He's the 2nd rated prospect in the entire state of Utah. And everything that I see from him on film is just an elite tight end who could be the next insert great BYU tight end that you love to watch. For me, Dennis Pitta. For some of you, Gordon Hudson. For others of you, insert whoever it is, Atula Mealy, Chad Lewis. The who's who of BYU tight ends, Brock Harris looks like that type of a guy if BYU can land him. Now, what are the chances BYU can do that, as he has announced that he will announce his commitment on April 7th, coming up early next week? I'm surprised he's actually announcing this commitment at this point, because he has not made all of his official visits. He's made visits to Michigan lately. He's been to BYU multiple times on unofficial visits. And I thought he would carry this into the summer after going on official visits to check out other campuses and obviously make an official visit to BYU, where his father once upon a time played for the BYU football program. But apparently he has decided that he knows where he's going, and he's going to make that announcement early next week. And it is very interested. I am very interested to see what he ultimately decides. A lot of intel out there indicates that a lot of people believe that BYU has had the inside track and has been doing a really, really good job recruiting him. I have heard nothing but positive vibes from my vantage point, and I don't proclaim to be the recruiting insider that others are out there. I will always defer to guys like Jeff Hansen on that. But here's the thing. What I have heard about Brock Harris is that BYU has done an incredible job making sure that they've loved him up and make sure that he knows that he's an absolute priority for the BYU football program. Who else is in the mix for him? Well, it also includes the likes of Georgia, Miami, Michigan, Oregon, and the University of Utah. Those are the 6 finalists that he lists that he'll be picking from as he makes this announcement on April 7th at 3 o'clock Central. So that's 2 o'clock Mountain Time. I hope it's BYU. I sincerely hope it's BYU, because this would indicate that BYU has the recruiting juice out there in the college football realm that many of you have been hoping would translate over from what they have done from the BYU basketball perspective in landing, as we already talked about today, a guy like AJ Dybantsa. You want to see top-tier talent joining Kalani Sitake's program, and that's exactly what Brock Harris is. This is a kid who there's a person connected to the BYU football program. If I were to name their name, you know exactly who it is, who told me when he came to BYU's camp last year as I guess he'd be 16 or 17 years old at that point, they said he was the single best athlete they have ever competed against in that camp, that they have seen with their own eyes. He said this person said that he was, speaking of Brock Harris, just, you could tell he was a different type of athlete. That is why BYU needs to win this recruiting battle, if at all possible, because it's ultimately Brock's decision. He will have that say on where he is going to play, and he could renege on that decision at some point down the line. But I sincerely hope it's BYU, because it would show once again that Kalani Sitake, Aaron Roderick, in the case of Brock Harris, a guy like Kevin Gilbride as BYU's tight ends coach, that they did the work and garnered and won a recruiting battle against top-tier opposition on the recruiting front. Georgia has guys like Brock Bowers they can point to a kid like Brock Harris and say, hey, you want to be the next Brock who's an All-American for us and goes on to have a record-breaking rookie year in the NFL? Yeah, come and play for the Georgia Bulldogs. Miami's got a strong history of tight end play in their own right. University of Utah's had a pretty good run lately with some pretty stellar tight ends. Up and down the list, there is just the who's who of college football recruiting this kid. Oregon and Michigan, they are no slouches. They are top-tier programs with NIL money to burn. BYU needs to win this recruiting battle and show that they are a national player in college football alongside being a national player when it comes to college basketball in the recruiting sense. NIL will play a role in this. The connections that Brock Harris has to BYU via his family, I would sincerely hope give the Cougars at least some sort of advantage, and the pitch to say 3.5-ish hours away from home and play top tier football in the Big 12. I hope those win him over among other things. NIL should not be a problem for BYU, as I understand it, both in football and basketball. They simply have the resources to compete with the best out there in the college ranks. The NIL money is flowing into BYU, and that should excite you. And if that's the overriding factor, I think BYU can compete very favorably on that point. But the bigger point I want to pass along is a guy like Brock Harris. Currently, BYU has 4 commitments in the 2026 recruiting cycle. The most recent one was a commitment from Ty Getchie out of Cherry Creek High School, who also plays tight end for BYU. But that is not going to preclude them from taking Brock Harris. They're both top-tier tight end talents and could be the next tandem of guys that are sensations at the tight end position for BYU. The one thing that Brock would do is elevate BYU from the 45 ranking they're at right now in the recruiting rankings and probably push them inside at this early juncture, the top 30 at worst, it feels like. He would kick off, I think, a strong run, hopefully over this spring and summer, of BYU adding top-tier talent to that 2026 recruiting cycle. And that talent could include the likes of the Pula brothers at Timpview, who have been committed to UCLA, but have been rumored to be open to flipping their commitment to maybe a program like BYU. Ryder Lyons is a top-tier 5-star quarterback who, in his own right, has announced he's making an official visit to BYU in June. Could they seal him up and add him to this 2026 cycle? What excites other prospects when it comes to committing to a program like BYU is seeing fellow top-tier talent like a Brock Harris already committed to play in Provo, Utah. It would be a massive recruiting win for BYU to win this, and fingers crossed they do that. And as soon as it is announced, we'll break it down, good, bad, or ugly, no matter what it involves when it comes to Brock Harris's commitment early next week. But I'm saying it right now, I sincerely hope it's the BYU Cougars, that hat or whatever he decides to do to announce his commitment. I hope it's the blue and white of BYU that he's sporting, and he announces, I'm going to be a BYU Cougar. All right, we will finish up today's show on the football front, talking more tight ends, guys that are currently in the program, because a guy like Brock Harris, he does have plans to go on a mission, so he's 2 or 3 years away from playing for BYU. Well, who are the current tight ends? Well, let's ask the guy who's coaching them up. That's Kevin Gilbride. I had a great opportunity during spring camp to catch up with him. I've been holding on to some of these interviews as the basketball run has kind of played out. It's now time to let you hear from them, and we'll talk to Kevin Gilbride next, right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Now, obviously, all of us have at times looked at our bank account and said, where did all my money go? Well, here's the deal. Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, among many other things, it's easy to lose track of that money, and that's where Monarch Money comes in as your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. It's not just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center, tracking all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you can stop just managing your money and start building actual wealth and have that money stay in your account. We're like, hey, I've got more money than I thought of. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check all of your finances, track your spending, and even plan your long-term goals. And once again, it is essentially your personal CFO to make sure you're on the right track. So take control of your finances and do it with our friends at Monarch Money. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, promo code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Get started today, once again, at monarchmoney.com. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Another plug for you guys. If you've not done so already, just sign up for the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. I'm passing along all the intel I'm hearing on the transfer portal front for BYU in basketball right now. Everything I know about the insider tidbits I have about BYU sports I'm allowed to pass along, they're going to our Locked On Cougars Insider Group first. The best part is those updates and questions and updates about the podcast are coming to your phone in the form of a text message. Does not get much more fun than that. You can ask questions anytime via text message back to me, and it's all just for $5 a month to be a part of the Insiders Group. And the kicker on all of this is you get a 2-week free trial, 14 days before you're charged to anything. Click the link in the show notes below, whether you're watching this on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast in the audio format, and join us today on the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. All right, let's talk BYU football, and more importantly, BYU tight ends. I just talked about a guy in Brock Harris who you hope is going to be a BYU Cougar. Well, a guy who could be coaching him up and has obviously played a pivotal role in recruiting him is BYU tight ends coach Kevin Gilbride. Gilbride has got a long track record. He played quarterback in college for a year at BYU before transferring to Hawaii. Coached in the NFL for years, has developed talents like Victor Cruz. He's done some really, really impressive things in his coaching career, and he's bringing all that acumen to BYU's tight end position. Now, last year, that position group was bloated, to be quite blunt about it, with a lot of guys who didn't really pan out to be what BYU hoped was they were going to get from their tight end position. Keanu Hill had health issues that really precluded him from really breaking out. Ethan Erickson, the same thing. Mata'ava Ta'ase had moments, but really never seized control of the job. You also saw guys like Ray Paulo, etc. It just didn't work out. The young stud in Reiner Swanson is now in the mission field, headed to Nairobi, Kenya. So we will not see him for 2 more years at least. So there was a dearth of talent in that position group. And you know what you do when you have a dearth of talent? You look to the transfer portal to find options. And that's where BYU looked first to add talent to their group, but also in the recruiting ranks out there at the high school level to bolster this group. Well, here's the thing. Kevin Gilbride broke it all down as to how they approached it, how they landed guys like Carson Ryan, and a whole lot more in an exclusive conversation right here with myself on Locked On Cougars.
You lost a lot of guys from your unit last year. Graduations, a guy like Reiner going on a mission. So what was the biggest key for you as you looked in the portal and obviously in recruiting to revamp this position group?
Well, we knew that we had to get somebody that had some experience playing. Mm-hmm. Ethan Erickson had a bunch of experience last year and played really well for us. So we knew we had one, but we needed to get another one. And being able to get Carson Ryan was a big get for us. You know, he has a lot of experience playing at the college level.
Yeah. Did you know Carson at all before he hit the portal? I know some of the coaches here were familiar with him, having grown up in the state.
I didn't know him as much as well as those guys did. Okay. Seems like our entire staff knew him, tried to recruit him multiple times, all that. I didn't, but I had noticed him through the course of the year. Okay. You know, as we had crossover film with Utah, and so I was always intrigued by him, but I knew nothing about if he was going to get into the portal or really even what year he was.
Okay. What's the biggest thing you liked about him as a player?
His versatility. Like, he's tough as anything, but he can also stretch the field and go make a play on the ball, or he can get open on a stick route, simple stick route. And so he can run block, he can pass protect, and he can run the route tree and execute at a high level. So there's a lot to like there.
I know as coaches you had versatility, and is that something you felt like last year maybe you got a little pigeonholed? Certain guys who could do certain things and other guys could do other things, but you never had the all-around guy in essence?
To an extent, I feel like we could have me personally could have utilized our guys better, but that's something that you learn and you live and learn and you get better at as a coach, and when you go to different places with different staffs and that type of thing. But you're always looking for the guys that can do everything, but it's rare that you get the guys that can do everything. So the more you can recruit that way, the better. But if not, you still need to be able to maximize what they do well and minimize their deficiencies so that they can be on the field to do everything still.
So has Carson, I guess, lived up to what you expected of him so far?
Yes. Now, it's very early in the process,
Sure.
but from a physical standpoint, certainly. From a mental capacity to learn the offense, certainly. And so that's actually been very impressive. And then his work ethic has been tremendous. So far, so good.
So essentially, Ethan, obviously, because he has his experience, is he running right there with Carson, just kind of the 1-2 tandem currently, I guess?
Yeah, I don't want to categorize who as starters and all that stuff, but yes.
Okay.
but I do need to mention this about Ethan. Ethan's done a great job with all the new guys as far as getting those guys caught up to speed. Carson included, but some of the the incoming freshmen that we have, the return missionaries that we have. So it's I've been very happy with him, with his approach to understanding how his leadership role.
How do you envision this tight end position becoming a bigger part of the offense? I think that the fan base wants to see, because tight ends in BYU history, this is a guy who came here and played here. Tight ends are all over the record books in this program.
Right.
What do you want to see from the tight end position as the position coach?
Just more opportunities to catch the ball. That would be it, really. But I will say this: the last season, our guys performed at an incredibly high level with what they were asked to do, and so I'm very proud of them for that. But from a selfish standpoint, meaning I want to look out for my guys, just having them touch the ball more. But that would be really it.
Okay. Now, Noah Moyaki, I covered him in high school here, and guys take time to get back from missions. Is he finally where you feel like, okay, he can really start stepping in and start contributing?
I do think that, yes. And it did take him a while. Now, he's worked his butt off to get to the point that he's at now, and I think he's got a little ways still yet to go. But I do think he's worked himself into the position body-wise where he could help us.
You talk about the new guys coming in, Tucker Kelleher, et cetera. What's the biggest, impediment for a young player to come in and make an impression early?
Well, right now Tucker's hurt, so we
can't.
Okay,
so he's okay.
Practice.
Yeah, okay.
But I would say usually it's learning the offense. Now these guys have learned the offense. They've all done a great job, and again, I credit Ethan for that as well. His willingness to help those guys. But usually it's that. But I would say with this group, it can be. Number one, the injury for Tucker. For Cole Clement, he hadn't played much tight end. He'd played more receiver in high school. So he's learning how the run blocking schemes and techniques and all that. And then we need to get Luke Hanchett all the way healthy too.
You talk about run blocking. I've talked to guys who have made the transition, and they say the biggest thing to do it is to learn it's just to do it. Is that it? Okay.
It is. No, there's certainly technique and approach and all that stuff, but you've got to do it, and you have to understand how fast it happens when the defender's a little bit tighter to you. The departure angles, how that's going to manipulate a defender and how he's going to react to it. So there's those. You just have to do it. I can teach you how to do it, but until you've done it over and over and over again, there's still going to be things to fix.
Everything else in football is all about reps,
correct?
Right?
Yes.
Now, as you look forward here, spring's a time for experimentation, and that means you can use different formations, you can use position changes. Are you expecting much of that from your group? Because you're such a, new group overall.
We'll still do it.
Okay.
We'll still ask those guys to challenge themselves as far as knowing what to do in different scenarios, because that's what we're going to ask them to do through the course of the year. So might as well, not spoon feed them now, but have them drinking from the water hose now, or from the fire hose now. So that come season time, come training camp, that it'll be old hat to them at that point.
I've got an interesting question, because Reiner's going on a mission. He's going to Africa, of all places. What do you do as a position coach to prepare him and say, hey, see you in 2 years? Do you tell him anything, or you say, hey, best of luck, we'll see you down the line?
I'm not going to tell you exactly what I said to him, but it's be where your feet are. Okay. You're out there serving a mission for a purpose, and it's a higher purpose than even just playing football for BYU. So so experience and be where your feet are and do the best, and I know he's going to do a great job.
Last thing for me is your experience. You played here for a short time as a player, then obviously you've been off coaching NFL, you've been all over the place. What sets BYU apart in your opinion? It's
the people. It really is. Whether you're talking about the coaching staff or the players or the fan base, it's the people. It's how much they care about this university and the mission of the university. It's special. It's a fun thing to be a part of, and it's different. It's different. And I explain it to people that way. Okay. I explain it to them by saying you just have to experience it, and it's not for everybody, but when it is, it really is.
There you have it. Kevin Gilbride, BYU tight ends coach. A big thank you to him for taking the time to join us here on the podcast. I have got a bunch of those type of interviews stored up. I had a lot of conversations during spring camp with BYU basketball, kind of taking the BYU sports universe by storm. I held on to them, and we will get to them in the coming days and weeks here on the podcast. We'll tease ahead to later this week. The plan is to have Connor Pay back on the show, so stay tuned for that. If all goes well, we should have him on Friday, so stay tuned for that. But as always, thank you for all of your support. support. Big thank you once again to Kevin Gilbride for joining the show. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And hey, make sure you're an everydayer right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.